They were built to last forever, but nothing lasts forever against the power of water. As today, we're watching the most jaw-dropping dam failures ever captured. Moments when concrete crumbles, steel bends, and no umbrella can help you. This is what happens when a 50-meter section of the Manawa Dam simply erodes away during a massive downpour. The dam on Wisconsin's Little Wolf River couldn't withstand the pressure when an incredible 12.7 centimeters of rain fell in just a few hours. That's almost a month's worth of rainfall in less than half a day. The resulting breach sent a wall of water rushing through downtown Manawa, flooding the entire city center and washing away multiple streets. Beach Street was completely destroyed, while Union Street, North Bridge Street, Howard Street, and Industrial Drive were all submerged under the surging waters. The flooding was so extensive that all entrances to the city of 1,200 people had to be blocked off, completely isolating the community that sits 88 kilometers west of Green Bay. Emergency officials had to open the remaining dam gates to release pressure, preventing an even more catastrophic total collapse that would have sent millions of cubic meters of water downstream. Minnesota's century-old Rapidan Dam teeters on the edge of catastrophic failure in June 2024 when torrential rains transformed the Blue Earth River into a raging torrent. The powerful floodwaters bypassed the aging structure by carving an entirely new river channel around its western edge, effectively rendering the dam useless. As debris piled against the dam's face, the swollen river rose above the dam's crest before finding the path of least resistance, cutting through soil and literally creating its own alternate route. Newly formed channel unleashed such destructive force that it completely washed away an electrical substation, knocking out power to hundreds of homes in the area. The flooding was part of a wider disaster affecting southern Minnesota, with water levels reaching historic heights comparable to the catastrophic floods of 1997 and 2007. And to make sure you don't miss these record breakers, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. A catastrophic glacier collapse unleashed nature's fury on the Rishi Ganga Dam in India's Chamoli district. The massive ice chunk broke off in the Joshimath area, triggering a violent flash flood that surged through the Dhauli Ganga Valley with unstoppable force. The raging waters completely obliterated the dam at the Rishi Ganga Power Project, washing away the entire structure as if it were made of paper. Downstream, the Tapovan Power Project's dam also breached under the enormous pressure. The disaster's scale forced authorities to empty the Alaknanda, Srinagar, and Rishikesh dams as precautionary measures to prevent further catastrophe. The flooding was so severe that it destroyed a bridge, while putting multiple states on high alert. Emergency response teams were deployed as waters continued to rise, with even monitoring water levels along the Ganga River 100+ kilometers away. Pushed to the breaking point by relentless downpours, Brazil's Carioca hydroelectric dam nearly collapsed in 2022. The critical infrastructure in Para de Minas faced immediate failure as extreme rainfall battered the region with 241.7 millimeters in just 72 hours, almost 75% of January's typical monthly total. The crisis extended beyond a single dam, as a nearly iron ore mine dam in Nova Lima overflowed, flooding a major highway and halting traffic for 2 days. Across Minas Gerais state, an alarming 36 mining dams were simultaneously declared in states of emergency by Brazil's mining agency. The widespread disaster transformed entire towns into waterscapes as rivers broke their banks, with the Paraopeba River submerging neighborhoods and forcing more than 28,000 people to evacuate their homes as authorities monitored dams that could burst at any moment. When the monsoon season pushed Myanmar's aging Swarachayong Dam beyond its limits in August 2018, disaster struck without warning. The dam's unique duck beak-shaped spillway suddenly fractured, unleashing a massive torrent of water that inundated nearly 100 villages across the region. The raging floodwaters damaged crucial infrastructure, including a portion of Myanmar's main highway connecting the major cities of Yangon and Mandalay. The force of water was so immense it caused a bridge on this vital transportation artery to buckle and become completely unusable. The compromised dam forced nearly 50,000 people to evacuate as water levels continued to rise. The flooding transformed the plains below the dam into temporary lakes, submerging thousands of acres of valuable rice fields. Despite authorities initially telling residents there was no cause for concern just days before the breach, the situation rapidly deteriorated into one of Myanmar's most significant dam failures of the decade. The Chambishi Tailings Dam in Zambia suffered a catastrophic collapse, unleashing an environmental nightmare of unprecedented scale. The Sino Metals facility's walls gave way, releasing over 50 million liters of highly acidic mining waste that surged into the Mwambashi River with devastating consequences. The toxic flood cut off water supplies to more than 500,000 residents in the copper belt town of Kitwe, and contaminated vast stretches of crucial farmland already suffering from drought conditions. What makes this failure particularly alarming is that it occurred as a facility operated by the world's leading copper producer, which operates outside the International Council on Mining and Metals standards that only cover about 1/3 of global mining operations. The full economic and ecological impact remains unknown, as toxic sludge continues to spread through vital waterways in this copper-rich region. Why do you think such a big company couldn't prevent this? Tell us in the comments. Unexpectedly, early-season torrential rains proved catastrophic for Sudan's critical Arbat Dam, causing a devastating collapse in August 2024. Situated just 40 meters from Port Sudan, the structure had been steadily weakening as silt built up from persistent downpours that arrived much earlier than the typical rainy season. When the dam's walls gave way, the 25 million cubic meters of water that had been impounded created a massive flood wave that swept across the landscape with terrifying force. The resulting deluge completely obliterated at least 20 villages and forced to evacuate 50,000 people west of the dam, while areas to the east remained inaccessible and damage there unknown. Beyond the immediate destruction, the collapse created a secondary crisis for Port Sudan, the country's home to hundreds of thousands of war refugees. The city suddenly faced an acute water shortage as the Arbat Dam had been its primary water source. Relentless storms triggered the partial collapse of Brazil's 14-day hydroelectric dam in 2024. Situated between Cotipora and Bento Gonçalves, the structure failed under the pressure of extraordinary heavy rainfall that dumped more than 15 centimeters of water in just 24 hours. The dam's failure sent a surge into the already swollen Taquari River, exacerbating flooding across 150 municipalities. Rising waters transformed cities into lakes, with residents wading through chest-high currents as entire communities were cut off. Infrastructure throughout the region crumbled, with bridges collapsing and roads washing away. The disaster forced 10,000 people to evacuate, while hundreds of thousands lost access to electricity and clean water. Even with emergency response, including 12 aircraft and 626 soldiers, isolated communities remained unreachable as rivers rose to extraordinary levels. This raging torrent, flowing twice as fast as Niagara Falls, nearly destroyed a major Tennessee dam. In 2024, Hurricane Helen unleashed an unprecedented deluge on the Nolichucky Dam, pushing water levels as staggering 2.4 meters. The Nolichucky River, typically flowing at 14 cubic meters per second, exploded to an astonishing 2,380 cubic meters per second during the storm. This flow rate is equivalent to filling an Olympic swimming pool every 1.1 seconds. The river rose to an estimated 9 meters, destroying measurement gouges that topped out at 5.8 meters. Emergency managers ordered immediate evacuations as fears of an imminent breach spread. While the dam's main structure miraculously withstood the catastrophic pressure, its right abutment suffered significant damage, requiring extensive repairs. After all, the hurricane dumped between 38 to 76 centimeters of rain, burying entire towns like Irwin under a floodwater that devastated factories and infrastructure. Kenya's Patel Dam in Solai failed in 2018 after weeks of torrential rainfall overwhelmed the structure's capacity. Located within the Rift Valley region, the dam's walls suddenly gave way, unleashing a massive wall of water and mud that swept across nearly 2 kilometers of surrounding countryside. The flood wave obliterated hundreds of homes on the expansive bordering the reservoir, transforming agricultural land into a disaster zone in seconds. Eyewitnesses described the events as a sea of water that smashed through buildings with unstoppable force, leaving nothing but destruction in its wake. This dam failure was part of a flooding crisis across Kenya during the 2018 seasonal rains, which had already displaced more than 225,000 people nationwide. British Columbia's Mount Polley mine suffered an earthen dam failure, unleashing one of Canada's worst environmental mining disasters. The breach sent a torrent of contaminated water and metal-laden sand pouring from the mine's retention basin into the wilderness. The scale of the release was enormous. More than 10 million cubic meters of toxic water and 4.5 million cubic meters of contaminated sand surged into Polley and Quesniel lakes. This volume would fill approximately 4,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The force of the flood transformed Hazeltine Creek from a small 1-meter-wide stream into a raging 150-meter-wide river of pollution. The contamination was so severe that authorities imposed water use bans in Likely and other nearby towns until water quality could be verified safe. El Nino intensified rains triggered another devastating dam failure in Kenya's Rift Valley, when a reservoir catastrophically burst its banks. The sudden collapse unleashed a massive wall of water and mud that swept away entire neighborhoods, cutting roads and burying homes in thick layers of debris. The disaster struck during Kenya's unusually intense March to May wet season, which had already forced more than 130,000 people across 24,000 households to evacuate their homes nationwide. Flash floods had submerged roads and neighborhoods across the country, including parts of the capital. This failure was part of the climate crisis affecting East Africa, where El Nino enhanced storms, described as one of the 5 strongest ever recorded, also caused flooding in neighboring Tanzania, Burundi, and Uganda. This $4 billion hydroelectric project on Colombia's Cauca River was on the brink of enormous failure. In May 2018, relentless rainfall overwhelmed the Ituango Dam, which was designed to generate 17% of Colombia's entire electricity supply, with a capacity of 2.2 billion cubic meters of water, enough to fill 880,000 Olympic swimming pools. The massive structure faced critical design flaws when heavy rains raised the water level dramatically. The potential flood zone stretched across 12 towns spanning over 200 kilometers of riverside territory, threatening an area comparable to twice the size of Washington, D.C. Authorities implemented a maximum alert state, evacuating nearly 5,000 people to escape the potential torrent. The state of emergency affected 4 provinces, with emergency response teams deployed to prevent what could have been Colombia's worst infrastructure disaster in decades. This is what happens when a bomb cyclone hits a 91-year-old dam. In March 2019, Nebraska's Spencer Dam was obliterated when a storm of floodwaters and massive ice chunks roared down the Niobrara River. These weren't just any ice pieces. They measured up to 60 centimeters thick and weighed as much as 3 tons each, creating a battering ram of frozen destruction. The hydroelectric dam, classed as having significant hazard potential, stood no chance against this unprecedented ice run. Workers at the power station fled as the structure began to fail, but the catastrophic collapse sent a wall of water and ice downstream, destroying bridges, highways, and buildings. This disaster exposed a notable lack of knowledge among safety officials about ice-related dam failures, highlighting the vulnerability of America's aging water infrastructure to extreme weather events. This massive wall of mud was unleashed just weeks after the dam was certified as stable. In 2019, Brazil's Brumadinho tailings dam failed despite being classified as low risk by the National Mining Agency.